Hello, good morning. Welcome to Breakfast with Lakshmi Gopal and Ben Thompson.
Our headlines today. Calls for more changes at the top of the post office as the company's chairman steps down amid ongoing tensions over the Horizon computer scandal.
9 countries suspend funding. Good morning. It is Sunday, the 28th of January. Our top story. There are calls for further leadership changes at the post office after the chairman of the organisation stood down yesterday.
Henry Staunton left the role following the fallout from the Horizon IT scandal. But there's confusion over whether it was by mutual consent, as reported by the government, or whether he was asked to leave, as the post office says. Our political correspondent Ian Watson has the latest.
It's been thrown out and that's me, I'm free.
Rob Thompson told his sister last week that his 2006 conviction for embezzlement had been overturned, but many more former sub-postmasters are waiting for their names to be cleared. The government is rushing legislation through Parliament to do so, and it's now changing some of those at the top of the organisation. This weekend, the Business Secretary, Badenoch, picked up her phone to this man, Henry Staunton, and asked him to stand down as chairman of the Post Office. Appointed just over a year ago, there's no suggestion he was involved in the Horizon scandal. But the Business Secretary has been focusing on the Post Office's response to that scandal. In a statement, she said, "The Post Office is rightfully under a heightened scrutiny level. I felt there was a need for new leadership, and we've parted ways with mutual consent."
The Post Office told us over and over, you're the only one.
The reason for that heightened scrutiny was this ITV drama at the start of the year. One of those portrayed in the series was the Conservative politician James, now Lord Arbuthnot, who campaigned for victims of the scandal. He told the BBC that he hadn't known in advance about the Post Office chairman's departure.
Well, I'm surprised. I wasn't expecting it. Because Henry Staunton has only been in the position of chairman for a year now. But it may present an opportunity because there's a huge challenge at the post office, changing the culture.
Campaigners have complained about bonuses paid to post office management and accused the publicly owned company of foot-dragging over compensation. Those who know Henry Staunton say he'd been keen to speed this up. But with an ongoing public inquiry and demands for a wider leadership shake-up, it's possible that Badenoch will have more changes to make. Ian Watson, BBC News.
We're going to talk to a former sub-postmistress a little later in the programme about the implications of that departure and what it may tell us about what happens next in this scandal. At the time, though, just approaching 4 minutes past 6, let's check in on the rest of today's main stories. Lakshmi has the details. Morning.
Morning, I do, Ben, yes. The UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees has urged countries which have paused funding for the organisation to reconsider.
Well, that's it from another edition of Unspun World, from the team and from me. Until we meet again, goodbye.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to Breakfast with Lakshmi Gopal and Ben Thompson.
Good morning. Our headlines today. Calls for more changes at the top of the post office as the company's chairman steps down amid ongoing tensions over the Horizon computer scandal.
9.
Bring you the details shortly.
Good morning. It is Sunday, the 28th of January. Our top story, there are further calls for leadership changes at the post office after the chairman of the organisation stood down yesterday.
Henry Staunton had been in the role since December 2022 and left following the fallout from the Horizon IT scandal. Our political correspondent Ian Watson has the latest.
It's been thrown out and that's me, I'm free.
Rob Thompson told his...
Weirdly, almost seems to dwarf those buildings to the right
city,
of it. It's bizarre, isn't it? It's got 20 decks, 7 swimming pools, 6 water slides. So there's a swimming pool without a water slide. I mean, that's just not enough, is it? And more than 40 restaurants and bars, and it can carry up to 8,000 passengers.
I suspect just as many crew as well.
Well, yes, because actually there's quite a high ratio of crew to passengers on these ships, isn't there?
There's a lot for them to be looking after.
Yeah,
but environmental groups, well, they've criticised the use of LNG to power the ship. They say it's actually more damaging than regular fuel oil.
Oh, it's very bright, very neon, isn't it?
There's a bit of everything on that ship.
A little bit of something for everyone, if that's your thing.
Hopefully some sunshine as well, and Simon's been telling us it's getting a little warmer here, which is good news. Good morning.
Hello,
Simon.
good morning. Yeah, a bit of everything in the weather, actually.
Okay.
Simon, you're right, a little bit of everything. Thank you. Now, the time is 16 minutes past 7, and as you may know, we've been talking this morning about the chairman of the Post Office stepping down from his role after just over a year amid fallout from the Horizon IT scandal.
Hundreds of sub-postmasters were wrongly accused of fraud, theft or false accounting due to faulty computer software. Let's talk now to Jo Hamilton, a former sub-postmistress who was falsely accused of stealing tens of thousands of pounds. Jo, morning to you. Thank you for being with us again. Does this departure make any difference whatsoever to people who were falsely accused, as we've said, of stealing tens of thousands of pounds from the Post Office?
No, I think the whole thing's a bit of a distraction from the real thing. It's the dead cat strategy, and I think it's designed to make it look like the business department, is being proactive and listening to the postmasters, but actually they're not.
And you've been told time and time again that this matter would be dealt with by government, and you've been telling us you're still waiting. Just explain what you've been told so far about how the government wants to make this right.
Well, we had the group litigation in 2019. We had a massive High Court victory, and for almost 500 postmasters are still waiting for compensation and, financial redress, as Alan would call it, because, let's face it, quite a large amount of the money that they're waiting for is money that's been stolen from them, and I think it's shameful. Grant Shapps last year said everyone would be paid by December. That hasn't happened. Now they're saying August this year, kind of-ish, but we'll extend the deadline just in case to August next year. And by then it'll be 6 years since the group litigation in court.
The business secretary has said, and this is a quote from her, felt there was a need for new leadership at the Post Office. And as we've said, Mr. Staunton, who has now stepped down, he's only been in that job since December of 2022. But is this not an attempt to bring about a fresh start, new leadership at the Post Office, which might address some of those concerns that you have about very little being done to put this right?
Well, I mean, he goes and then there's a process to appoint someone else. I mean, it's just a distraction. The business department are dealing with the compensation, not the Post Office. And I think the business department are really lacking. And if they haven't got the resource to sort it out in a timely manner, then they need to outsource it to maybe a commercial entity who can deal with it quickly.
So what is the solution, Jo? How would you like to see this resolved, given that you have now been waiting for so long, like many other people in a position similar to yours?
Well, I personally have had a bit of compensation because I'm one of the criminals. So lucky I had a criminal conviction, so I'm part of a different scheme. But all my colleagues... And
just to be clear, Jo, that was because you pleaded guilty, didn't you, in your trial, to avoid a worse sentence or a worse conviction. Just explain that, because you say you were guilty and therefore had some sort of compensation. Just explain that, those two.
Well, I was in the group of 555 that went to court in 2019. But then when we went through the group litigation, the judge took all the people who had criminal convictions to one side, and we all went through a process to then get our convictions quashed. And we've had a chance at some of our money back at the very least. But the group itself have been left hanging by the business department. And I think this whole move is a distraction from the fact that the business department doesn't seem to be able to deal with the compensation or the financial redress for the group, which adds up to about 490 people that are still waiting. And a lot of them are still waiting for the money that's been taken from them. You know, I mean, for goodness sake. And they're then talking of extending it into 2025, which will be 6 years. You know, how long does it take? If they can't do it, they should step aside and let someone else do it.
Yes, and Jo, you were answering my question, weren't you? And I interrupted you, I'm sorry, about what the possible solution might be. How would this be solved more quickly, do you think?
Well, I think they need to seriously think about outsourcing it, because the business department clearly can't deal with it. They've been dealing with it since 2019 and still nothing. Alan would say he doesn't want to be fast-tracked anymore. He's part of the group and he's received virtually nothing. And the whole thing is shameful. When you think of what people have lost, they've lost houses, livelihoods, and they've actually had money stolen from them by post office. So, for goodness sake, sort it out. I don't think the chairman leaving will have will make any difference to any of it. We just need they need to actually look at paying the postmasters quickly, not next year.
And quite aside from the personal toll that it has taken on everyone who's been involved, there is now a real trust issue about the brand, the post office overall. How do you ever think it will rebuild or regain the public's trust?
Well, I mean, it's radical, but I think it should go. It should be sold to someone who can take it over and rebranded, because no one will have any trust in it anymore. And the poor sub-postmasters who are running it as their own little businesses don't really need to be tarred with the same brush. I think if someone took it over, they might be able to, Alan's theory is sell it to Amazon or something like that, that had all the infrastructure there and could literally walk in and take it over as in a timely manner. But I don't think as a brand it can survive.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you say that. We're going to hear from the business secretary a little later. She's on the Laura Kuenssberg programme this morning. What message would you have for her?
Well, I get that they're trying to look like they're being proactive, but actually the focus should be on her own department. She should look at her department, and if they can't handle compensating these poor sub-postmasters, then they need to step aside and let someone move in and take it over.
OK, Jo, thank you for being with us this morning. We'll put those questions to the Business Secretary this morning. Jo Hamilton there, former sub-postmistress, joining us live from Basingstoke. Thank you so much.
Now, the time is 7:23, and as Ben mentioned, we've got the Laura Kuenssberg programme coming up soon. But for now, for months, polls have suggested that the Labour Party will win the next general election, with Sir Keir Starmer taking over as Prime Minister.